This audio was found alongside an abandoned military kit in the Lorraine Desert. In 2021, the voice of Reed Walker, a deserter who vanished without a trace. He claimed to have heard something coming from a forgotten well, but what we hear in the recordings wasn't spoken by him. It all began 3 days earlier when Reed fled the base and decided to cross the desert alone. Reed Walker, 36 years old, former Army sergeant. 3 days before disappearing, he left his base in southern New Mexico. No warning, no plan. Just a backpack, a canteen, and a digital recorder. No one knows exactly why he deserted. Some reports mention psychological trauma. Others point to an off-the-record mission gone wrong. Reed himself, in his early recordings, mentions things that shouldn't have happened, but he never elaborates. He crosses the Lorraine Desert trying to reach the Mexican border, heat during the day, cold at night. The recording serves as a confession, a journal and company. On the second day, he spots something. A low concrete structure, almost completely covered by sand. An old military symbol engraved on a metal plate. A well, sealed by a heavy iron lid, corroded by time. He decides to camp there and record another entry. Day 3, found shelter, maybe water. But the air here feels thick, like someone already breathed it before me. He laughs, but the laugh sounds hollow. And for the first time, the recorder picks up a sound he didn't make. The next morning, Reed seems tired. He slept poorly. Confused dreams. Voices whispering words he didn't understand. He starts the day by listening to the last recording from the night before. It starts normal. Wind sounds, a few scattered comments. But at minute 3, he hears, "Don't go down yet. You're not done." Reed pauses, replays. The voice is his. The tone, the way of speaking, identical. But he's sure he never said that. He decides to ignore it. Blames exhaustion, heat, solitude. He keeps walking, exploring the perimeter. Records brief entries. Later, when reviewing the recordings from that same day, he finds new segments. Disjointed phrases, always in his own voice. The ground is deeper than the body. Every step you take here has already been taken by you. The recording time starts showing glitches. Files with duplicated hours, loops of repeated minutes. One of them shows Reed sleeping, but with a background conversation, 2 voices, both sounding like him. As a test, he begins recording and speaks a single sentence. "If something's here, speak now." At the time, nothing responds. But on playback, there's a clear reply. "You've already spoken for me." Reed laughs, but it's a nervous laugh. He starts wondering if he's really alone out there, or if some part of him has already been in that place before and stayed behind. That night, he makes a decision. He's going to open the well and see what's down there. Reed waits until late afternoon when the heat begins to ease. He removes the iron plate covering the well with effort. The rust crumbles in pieces. Inside, a metal ladder descends at least 10 meters. The bottom isn't visible, only darkness and the muffled sound of his own echo. He straps a flashlight to his chest, turns on the camera, and begins to descend. The recording captures his breathing growing heavier. At 5 meters, he stops. Says the air is dense, that the stone feels damp. In the video, his voice sounds doubled. A millisecond delay, but with a slight difference in tone. He doesn't notice. He climbs a little further down until a metallic sound echoes. Something falls at the bottom. Reed decides to go back up. When he reaches the surface, he realizes the recorder had frozen. The display light blinks, files corrupted. He manages to recover only one audio. Upon listening, he hears his own voice saying, "I'm in the dark now, but I feel like I've been here before." Reed panics. He never said that. And the audio ends with another sound, like nails scraping metal, followed by slow breathing, far too close to the microphone. On the camera, A single frame appears for a fraction of a second. A silhouette behind him, inside the well, motionless, alone, but looking directly at the lens. After that, Reed didn't try to sleep again. He stayed awake, listening and remembering things he never lived. The next morning, Reed seems different. His voice on the recordings is slower, more deliberate. He speaks like someone who's already gone through all of it. In one audio entry, he says, "If I don't get out of here, I already know what happens." But up to that point, he had never descended to the bottom. In his backpack, he finds a metal capsule he swears he didn't bring. Inside, there's a photo of him, older, graying hair, unshaven beard. On the back of the picture, handwritten, "The voice needs a body. The next one must know." Reed doesn't remember taking that photo, doesn't recognize the place where it was taken. In another recording, he mentions a daughter, but he has no children. The sounds around the camp change. At night, there are metallic thuds from the bottom of the well, as if something were climbing, step by step. The audios show him talking to someone, but always alone on camera. In one, he repeats a question several times. "Do you remember me? Do you remember me? Do you remember me?" But the answer only comes later, in another file, in a voice identical to his. "I remember us." Reed begins to lose track of what's memory and what's suggestion. He writes in the journal, "Maybe I'm just rediscovering what I left here. Maybe this was always mine." And right after, "The well isn't dark, it's deep. I was just too shallow." At dusk, he makes his decision. He's going all the way down. Whatever it is, he needs to see it with his own eyes. The sun sets, the desert cools. Reed turns on the flashlight, straps the camera to his chest, and starts descending again. The ladder creaks with every step. He says little, just breathes deeply, like he knows this will be the last recording. At 10 meters, he reaches the bottom. The wall is worn concrete, marked with spiral scratches. There's a short tunnel, tall enough for a man to walk hunched. He enters. The camera shows a small, circular room. In the center, a metal chair facing a blank wall. On a rusted table, an old tape recorder. Reed approaches and presses play. The voice that comes from the recorder is his, but it's not the current recording. It's the entire story, from the first day, from the first sentence, told slowly, in detail, including moments that were never recorded. At the end, the recording says, "Now that you've arrived, the next recording begins." Reed lets go of the recorder, the flashlight flickers, the camera glitches, and a new audio starts to capture. Footsteps walking away from the chair, and then another breath, stronger, as if someone was sitting there now. The last captured image is the chair empty, and behind it, for a fraction of a second, a figure standing, faceless, but wearing the same clothes as Reed. 2 months after the disappearance, a border patrol team located a semi-buried metal structure in the Lorien Desert. The site matched coordinates transmitted via radio that were never officially sent. Inside the structure, an intact backpack, a modern digital recorder, and a short entry journal with the name R. Walker. No sign of Reed, no footprints nearby. The audios were recovered. Over 4 hours of recordings. Some files contain conversations between 2 identical voices, but with slightly different tones. In one segment, you can hear, "Do you remember when we went down?" "No, I'm the one who stayed." A video fragment was restored. It shows Reed walking in open terrain, captured by an aerial thermal camera, but no body was visible on the ground during the recording. The camera was filming something that technically wasn't there. The last audible phrase on the recorder before complete silence is, "I think the voice was mine, just from a time I haven't lived yet." The desert doesn't erase everything. It keeps. Sometimes what disappears is just repeating a cycle. Reed Walker was never found, but his voice keeps appearing. on radio frequencies, in corrupted audios. And they say, in the dreams of those who listen too closely. A phrase yet to be spoken, or a name that isn't yours, not yet. Make sure he came from within you. The desert is not empty, it simply guards things well. Beneath its dunes, stories sleep, waiting to be awakened. Isla wasn't looking for answers, but what she found was a voice. Buried among rocks and sand, an old journal, torn pages. Words that whispered when no one spoke. That's how Isla's journey began, with a lonely trail and a silence that didn't belong to her alone. Isla was 25 when she decided to walk alone through the Solara Desert. She chose a lesser-known path, far from tourist routes. Just her, a backpack, and the desire to hear her own thoughts. On the third day, while setting up camp near a rock formation, she saw something reflecting beneath the sand. It was an aged iron box with symbols engraved on the lid, heavy, rust-covered. Inside, there was an old journal. The leather cover cracked, the pages smelling of time. On the first page, handwritten in faded ink, "If you're reading this, you've already been chosen." Isla didn't understand what it meant, but as she turned the next few pages, something shifted. She began to feel that the journal didn't just want to be read, it wanted to be followed. And that's exactly what she did. She followed the words, wherever they wanted to take her. The first entries in the journal were records of an expedition in 1934. 4 researchers searching for what they called the Temple of Whispers, a place described in manuscripts unrecognized by any university. The words were confusing, dates scrambled, timelines that made no sense. One of the explorers wrote, "I heard a voice behind me, but no one had spoken. Only later did I realize it was my own voice, coming from another moment." Isla read aloud without realizing it. With each passage, she felt as if she was remembering, not discovering. On one of the pages, there was a drawing, 3 stones in a circle with a path between them. Isla recognized the place. She was less than a kilometer away. Following the sketched map between the pages, she walked to the site. When she arrived, the wind suddenly stopped. The silence grew heavier, and then she heard it. A whisper coming from nowhere, and at the same time, from within her. She turned on her phone to record, but later, the audio captured nothing. Only the image of her standing still, staring intently at the stones. In another passage she read, "Time here is not a line. It is a circle of sand, walked by those who've already passed, and those yet to come." Isla began to feel that the journal wasn't just old, it was active. And now, it was writing through her. The pages led Isla to a hidden trail between rocks where the map ended. But what she found was only the beginning. The trail led to a narrow crevice between 2 stone walls. On the other side, the terrain sloped gently down to a clearing covered in darker sand. In the center, 3 pillars nearly buried. One of them bore spiral inscriptions, similar to those Isla had seen in the journal. She began to dig with her hands, carefully clearing the base of the pillar. She then uncovered the entrance, a rectangular opening set into the ground, like a door made to stay hidden. With her heart racing and hands trembling, she descended the first few steps. The passage was narrow, carved straight into the rock. The walls were covered with markings, symbols, drawings, fragments of faces. At the end of the staircase, a circular room. In the center, a stone pedestal. And on it, an object covered by an aged cloth. Isla didn't touch it. She just watched. On one of the walls, she read, "The voice is only released when it is understood." When she took a photo, her phone camera froze. White screen. When she rebooted it, the image was gone. But the phrase kept echoing in her mind. The voice, the understanding, and the feeling that she was no longer alone there. That was when reality began to falter, not outside, But inside her, Isla tried to record more videos, but the files vanished. Sometimes they would appear for seconds, showing angles she hadn't filmed. In one of them, she was sleeping, though she was sure she hadn't. The clock showed 3:13, then 1:59, then no numbers at all. The compass spun slowly, as if searching for something. She heard her own voice reading the journal, but her mouth wasn't moving. The pages began to change. New passages appeared, written in her handwriting. And still, she didn't remember writing them. She is listening. She is almost ready. The journal was now speaking about Isla herself, as if narrating the present. In a side corridor, she found a broken mirror fixed to the wall. When she looked, she saw her reflection blinking with a delay. And in one shard, someone was standing behind her. When she turned, there was nothing. But the reflection still showed the presence. The sound of the desert had changed. Now it was a constant whisper, not of one voice but many. Isla began to understand. She wasn't there to uncover the past. She was part of it. And when the words began to write themselves, she knew the journal was ready to be closed. Isla returned to the temple's main chamber. The pedestal was still there, the cloth still covering the object. But now there was a new page in the journal. She didn't remember writing it, but it was her handwriting. "You are the new author. Continue the record. Leave your memory here." Isla sat on the ground, her back against the stone, the journal in her lap. The silence grew again around her. But inside, something kept whispering. She took a pen from her backpack and began to write. The words flowed effortlessly, as if they'd been waiting. The camera, still recording, filmed for 7 minutes. Slowly, the image darkened, not from lack of light, but as if something was covering the lens. And then, light tremors. Dust falling from the ceiling. A sound like sand being dragged. Finally, a hand, not hers, closes the journal in front of the camera. The recording ends with the image of the object covered on the pedestal. The light flickers one last time. Then, everything is swallowed by darkness. The camera was found months later, alone, with the journal beside it. But Isla was never seen again. The desert doesn't erase everything. It chooses what must remain hidden and what must be told. Isla was never found. No trail, no body, no answers. Only a camera buried near the ruins. And a journal, now closed, but with more pages than before. Some say her story never existed. Others say they've heard similar whispers in other places. Maybe Isla didn't disappear. Maybe she was absorbed. The temple remains buried. But sometimes the sand shifts. And when someone listens, the journal appears again. Not every story wants to be discovered. Some only want to be remembered. In the heart of a forgotten desert, a camera was found half buried in the sand. It was on, still working. Inside were the final recordings of a film crew that vanished without a trace. No bodies, no explanation, just hours of footage that were never meant to be seen. This isn't a story about monsters. It's about what happens when human curiosity pushes beyond the boundaries of the natural. Today, you're going to watch the final fragments of a project that was never completed, because no one came back to tell the story. But to understand what really happened, we need to go back to the beginning. In 2019, a small independent documentary crew set out on an expedition into the Black Ridge Desert, a remote area between Nevada and Arizona, known only on old military maps. The project was a documentary about forgotten rituals and lost trails, the kind of topic that attracts the curious but repels those who know too much. The crew was made up of 5 people. Aaron Blake, the director and writer, obsessed with indigenous myths. Maya Chun, lead camerawoman, skeptical but skilled. Victor Halle, sound operator, paranoid, always with a recorder running. Layla Monroe, producer, responsible for all the logistics. And Rafael Cota, the local guide, hired just days before the trip, with a past no one really looked into. They left Phoenix in a van equipped with drones, solar batteries, and state-of-the-art gear. None of the messages they sent after the third day of travel were ever delivered. And 3 weeks later, their names would be added to the official list of missing persons. The footage found on the camera shows us where everything began to go wrong. The first recovered images show the team arriving at the marked location, a pale stone plain surrounded by unusual rock formations, as if twisted by the wind itself. Aaron's voice, the director, appears in the recording. This is it, the map checks out. No one's ever filmed this before. They set up camp. It's the second day. Everything seems to be proceeding normally. But that same night, Maya records a video where she mentions the first incident. The batteries drained way too fast. Victor said he heard something, like a chant coming from the rocks. Rafael disappeared for almost an hour and came back without saying a word. In another audio clip, Victor says, "I recorded this when I was alone, but no one was talking." The audio plays in the footage. A slow whisper, almost a chant, echoes between gusts of wind. On the third day, Rafael points out a set of symbols carved into the rocks. They're circular shapes with markings that resemble eyes and spirals. Layla comments, "These symbols don't match anything we've studied. No known language. It looks older than anything." The drone footage from that day is the last to show the full team together. And then, small glitches begin to occur. Rafael's compass spins in circles. The GPS freezes. Maya tries to record a time-lapse, but the camera captures only static. At night, Victor begins muttering to himself. In the recordings, he says, "I think we're being watched, but there's no one here." And Leela, growing more anxious, asks, "Have you noticed that the sun seems to be taking longer to rise?" It was the next day when everything spiraled out of control, and the camera stopped recording one of the crew members. The first footage from day 4 shows the camp incomplete. Victor, the sound tech, vanished during the night. The last recording from him is an audio clip with intermittent static, where a single clear phrase is heard, spoken in a hurried tone. It's not a sound. It's a voice trying to be sound. Aaron tries to stay calm. He suggests returning to the starting point, but Maya refuses. She insists on using the drone to locate Victor, but the equipment no longer responds. The following videos show the crew growing increasingly tense. Layla begins recording everything compulsively with her phone, even without signal. In one clip, she's crying, whispering, "There are footprints around the tent." But no one left. Rafael appears agitated. He says he knows this place from ancient dreams, and that they've arrived somewhere they shouldn't have. One video shows him digging in the sand with his hands, repeating, "It's buried here. It's buried here." That night, Leela disappears. The next day, Aaron and Maya search the surroundings with flashlights. The footage is erratic, heavy breathing, distorted audio. At one point, Maya points the camera at a rock formation and says, "That wasn't there before. It was just sand." The camera shakes, the focus is lost. The last phrase captured in this part is from Aaron. "If you find this someone, please tell them we were real." What comes next is the final recording, the footage that ends everything. The last camera recording begins in chaos. Blurry images show a run through the darkness, gasping breaths, the dull sound of something hitting the sand. The camera is tilted on its side, filming only Maya and Aaron's feet as they whisper to each other, "He's coming. We need to get out of here. Look at me. Just walk. Don't look at him." Then the sound changes. Something like a metallic crack echoes for a few seconds. The image continues to shake, as if the ground itself were vibrating beneath the camera. A bright white light abruptly cuts across the screen, intense. The recording glitches. For nearly a minute, the video stays black. But the audio continues. There's a sound hard to describe. A hollow, repetitive echo, as if someone were tapping metal with their nails. And then, one final sentence. I can still hear them talking, even when no one's here. The image briefly returns, now static and noise. A frozen frame shows a cloudy sky, but with a dark silhouette on the horizon. No more voices. No more movement. That was the last thing recorded by the camera before the battery died. The memory card data shows the video was recorded nearly 16 hours after the team was supposed to have left the desert. No other recording equipment was found nearby, just the camera. Buried, as if someone had left it there on purpose. When the camera was finally discovered, months later, none of the questions had answers, but the theories were many. 9 months after the disappearance, a hiker found the camera partially buried in the sand, about 6 kilometers from the original camp location. The memory card was intact, but there was no other trace of the crew, no tent, no backpacks, no bodies. The official investigation listed the case as a disappearance in a remote area with probable extreme exposure and thermal disorientation, but the footage told a different story. Digital restoration experts analyzed the material, finding strange sound patterns, including frequencies that shouldn't be there. One of the waves resembled a chant, but with no voice. Theories quickly surfaced that the team had accidentally crossed into the territory of some isolated desert cult, that the signals were caused by secret military equipment used for acoustic testing, and the most unsettling one, that there's a temporal anomaly there, a fault in reality that distorts space and time. One of the investigators, who asked not to be identified, said something that was never added to the official report. I swear to God, when I listened to the final recording, I recognized my own voice in the background, but I've never been to that place. Since then, no other expedition has returned to the exact site. Access to the area was closed for environmental safety reasons, but those who saw the footage know it wasn't the environment that needed protecting. The desert swallowed 5 lives, but it left a message for anyone daring to return. The desert is silence, but silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's just absence. Absence of explanations, of return, of someone still searching for answers, even when there's no one left to hear. The case of the forgotten convoy remains unsolved. The files continue to circulate outside official channels, and everyone who watches them says the same thing, that there's something in the videos that isn't there, but that you feel. The sand covers, time distorts, but the camera saw. Maybe the team never left that place. Maybe they're still there, somehow. Trapped in a repeating moment, in a loop that only ends when someone watches again. If you've made it this far, you're part of it now too. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more lost files, more stories that tried to be buried, but refused to stay that way. Because as long as someone's listening, the desert will never be silent.